He gave his last coin to a homeless man on a freezing sidewalk, thinking it was just a moment of kindness. He didn't know it would unlock a buried legacy, ignite a business empire, and pit him against a forgotten heir who burns down anyone who builds what doesn't belong to them. Some stories start with fortune. His started with fire. I only had one coin left, not a dollar bill, not a 20 I forgot in a coat pocket. A coin. A stupid, scratched-up silver piece clinking lonely in my jacket like it had nowhere else to be. It was February. My fingers were blue. The heat in my apartment hadn't worked since Christmas, and the landlord stopped returning my texts after I told him I couldn't make rent again. So when I passed the old man on 3rd and Holden huddled next to a shopping cart that looked like it had been dragged through a war zone, I didn't stop. Not at first. I looked straight ahead past him like everyone else. But something about the way he held his paper cup out, not shaking, not desperate, just waiting, that got to me. That stillness. Like he wasn't begging. Like he already knew who would stop and who wouldn't. I didn't want to be who I was anymore. So I stopped, pulled the coin from my pocket, held it up to the light like that tiny piece of metal had more value than it ever deserved. This is all I've got, I said. He looked at me then. Really looked. His face was a map of lines and sunburn, beard wiry, eyes pale like frozen milk. But he didn't look surprised or grateful, just quiet. He reached out. I dropped the coin in his cup. It hit with a lonely plink. You gave your last piece, he said, voice low and smooth, too smooth for a guy who hadn't shaved since the Bush administration. Why? I didn't have an answer. So I said, because I've been where you are. He studied me for a second and then he laughed. Not loud, not mocking, just a soft chuckle like the punchline was mine and he was letting me in on the joke. Well, he said, maybe I've been where you are. I blinked. What's that supposed to mean? He reached into his coat. It should have been empty, maybe a bottle or a moldy granola bar. But instead, he pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Crisp, white, out of place like a rose in a junkyard. He handed it to me. What is it? A blueprint, he said. Of sorts. I opened it. It wasn't typed. It wasn't neat. Just a messy scrawl across one side. Start with ash. Build with what no one else wants. Charge for the cleaning, not the wood. What is this? I asked. He smiled like that was the exact response he was hoping for. An idea. Take it. Or don't. But I only give one. I looked back at him, and he was already walking away. No limp, no tremble, just a man leaving behind a riddle and a cupful of silence. I didn't chase him. I didn't even call out. I just stood there, blueprint in hand, wondering if I'd just been conned, blessed, or cursed. Maybe all three. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of the cold, not even because of the hunger, but because that phrase charge for the cleaning wouldn't leave me alone. So I did what I hadn't done in weeks. I got curious. I opened my laptop, borrowed Wi-Fi from the bodega downstairs, and started researching junk wood, burnt wood, torn down barns, storm-felled trees. And something weird happened. The idea made sense. People were paying thousands for tables made from reclaimed wood. Bars, restaurants, boutique hotels, they wanted that weathered look, that raw, rustic authenticity they could show off on Instagram. But the thing they hated most? Cleaning it. Removing nails, power washing, sanding, demolding. It was a pain. A time suck. A job no one wanted. Unless you charged them for it. My hands shook as I read article after article. Craigslist posts, Facebook groups. A niche market, sure. But real. Tangible. Possible. I looked over at the paper again. A blueprint. A seed. A dare. And I realized something then. That man wasn't just homeless. He was hiding. And maybe, just maybe, he'd chosen me for a reason. The next morning I stole a crowbar. Okay, borrowed. It was from the back of my buddy Dean's truck, the one he parked like an abandoned relic outside the scrapyard we both used to work at. I figured he'd understand. He owed me a favor anyway, and besides, he was never sentimental about tools. I threw it in the back of my dad's old station wagon, the one with the broken rear wiper and duct tape holding the passenger window shut. The idea from the blueprint, it had crawled under my skin overnight. I couldn't shake it. It was half-formed madness, but it was mine. Or maybe it was his. That strange old man with the eyes that didn't match the rest of his story. First stop? A collapsed barn 2 counties over I remembered passing months ago. Siding half gone, roof pancaked inward, nature reclaiming it one vine at a time. Looked worthless. Probably was. Unless you were me. Unless you were looking for things no one else wanted. I pulled off the highway just after sunrise. Wind sharp. Air smelled like frost and rotted hay. I climbed the fence and walked the perimeter, boots crunching through dry weeds and frostbitten mud. The structure was worse than I remembered. Perfect. The wood was silvered and scarred. Faint hints of red paint still clung to the beams like they hadn't gotten the memo that time moved on. Every board told a story. Weathered. Broken. Honest. I snapped photos. Close-ups of texture. Knots. Nail holes. Rusted braces. Then I posted them to a reclaimed wood forum I'd found online the night before. Untouched. Naturally aged. Ready for the right buyer. Message if interested, cleaning included. I didn't expect anything. But 30 minutes later I got a reply. How much for 30 board feet, cleaned and cut? Need it for a countertop in downtown Philly. Urgent. My heart stuttered. Was this real? I replied, lowballing the price. I didn't want to scare them off. They said yes. No haggling. Said they'd wire half up front. Wanted delivery in 4 days. That was the moment everything changed. No business license. No shop. No team. Just me, a rusty crowbar, and a blueprint drawn by a man who probably slept under bridges. And yet somehow, I had my first order. I started tearing down the boards that same afternoon. It was brutal. Hands blistered. Rusted nails fought me like they had something to prove. The wind stung every time I bent to lift a beam. I wasn't ready. Not physically. Not mentally. But I didn't stop. Couldn't. Each board I pulled felt like ripping the past loose from the dirt. Old farm tools leaned forgotten in corners. A lantern still hung from a cracked beam. There was something sacred about it, like I wasn't salvaging wood, I was excavating memory. I loaded everything I could fit into the wagon, using towels and old t-shirts to pad the splinters. I worked through the night, by flashlight, cursing and humming and bleeding and laughing. 3 days later, I was back in the city. I power washed the wood behind an abandoned car wash after bribing the janitor $20 to leave me alone. I borrowed a planer from a friend who didn't ask questions. I sanded, sealed, cut, and then I delivered. It was a boutique furniture store, all white walls and concrete floors and ironic candles that smelled like haunted leather. The owner wore all black, her hair up in a way that said, "Don't touch me unless you're famous or dying." She barely looked at me until she saw the wood. Then her face changed. "This is beautiful," she said, running her hand over the grain like she was petting a ghost. "From a barn outside Allentown," I said. "Collapsing. No one wanted it." Her eyes lit up. "You cleaned all this yourself?" I nodded. She handed me a check. It had a comma in it. I left that place feeling drunk. Not on booze. On possibility. That night, I bought myself a real dinner, fries, burger, even dessert. Sat in the parking lot with the engine running and radio low, staring at the receipt like it was a trophy. I was building something. From ash. From rot. From nothing. I texted the client from the wood forum, "Job delivered. Got more if you need it." He replied instantly, "I'll take 100 board feet this time. More rustic, less sanded. More." Just like that. But then, 2 nights later, I saw him again. The old man. Same coat. Same eyes. Different corner. This time, I didn't walk past. "You again," I said. He looked up. Smiled. "How's the blueprint?" I sat down beside him. Cold concrete. Coffee steam curling between us. "It worked," I said. "I cleaned deadwood. Sold it. They paid." He didn't look surprised. "Of course they did. Who are you?" I asked. He chuckled. "Once I was someone who knew how to turn ruin into profit. Before I forgot why it mattered." I studied him. "Why are you out here?" "Because I chose silence over shame. That stuck with me. Hard." Then he leaned close. "You have the first piece. Now here's the second." He slipped something into my coat pocket. A photograph. Old. Sepia-toned. It was of a storefront. Rustic. Clean. Above the door was a sign. "Alder and Sons Reclaimed Purpose." And standing in the doorway? Him. Clean-shaven. Proud. Young. Next to a boy, maybe 9 or 10. The back of the photo read, "Find what I lost before you lose what you found." I looked up to ask it, but the old man was already gone. Just there where he used to be. And suddenly, I wasn't just building a business. I was chasing a ghost. The next morning, I held that photo like it was a treasure map, but all the landmarks had been washed away by time. Alder and Sons Reclaimed Purpose. There was no address. No phone number. Just a storefront, a sign, and 2 people frozen in the moment before life cracked them apart. I scanned it into my laptop, ran it through image search software, nothing. No hits. No archived business listings. It was like Alder and Sons had never existed or like someone went to a lot of trouble to erase it. But the word that stuck with me wasn't Sons. It was Reclaimed Purpose. Because that was exactly what I was doing, wasn't it? Taking rot and waste and selling it back to people who thought old was the new luxury. My next delivery was a coffee table, 4 feet of hand-sanded barn floorboards. The guy who bought it was a startup guru who talked with his eyes closed. Paid cash. Didn't blink when I added delivery fees. I should have been happy. But I wasn't. Because something about that photo and the man who gave it to me felt like an unopened door with smoke curling out underneath. So I started asking questions. I took the photo to the Historical Society. Showed it to an old woman named Marianne with arthritis in both hands and a memory sharp enough to slice bread. "Alder and Sons," she said, squinting. "That was back on Merchant Avenue. Closed in the late 90s, I think. Fire, maybe? Or bankruptcy. Do you remember the man?" She shook her head. "Not exactly. But the kid. I remember him. Used to come into the diner down the block. Quiet. Polite. Always wore suspenders like he was playing dress-up. What happened to them?" Her face changed. "No one really knows. One day the shop was there. Next, it wasn't. That wasn't an answer. It was an invitation. That afternoon I drove out to Merchant Avenue. Most of it was gentrified now. Art galleries and vegan pastry shops. But the far end, the part where the sidewalks buckled and the air smelled like memory, still held its ghosts. I found the lot. Empty now. Chain link fence. Weeds tall enough to whisper. But the foundation was still there. Cracked concrete. A spray-painted symbol, triangle inside a square that made my stomach twist for no reason I could explain. And one brick, just one, resting loose by the back wall, almost like it had been set there for me to find. I picked it up. Underneath, tucked into the dirt like a time capsule, was a rusted key and a folded note sealed in plastic. My name wasn't on it, but I opened it anyway. If you've come this far, you're already in deeper than you realize. Use the key. The address is inside the lock, but be sure you want what's behind that door. Some truths don't wait quietly. No signature. No return address. Just that warning. I should have walked away. But I didn't, because I was already too deep. I found the lock that night. Not by design, by instinct. There was an old storage complex behind a boarded-up strip mall 2 towns over. Half the units were broken into, others rusted shut. But one #309 had a new padlock that didn't match the rest. The key fit like it had been made yesterday. The door groaned open. Inside was dust, and silence, and everything. Stacks of blueprints, sketches, photos, old ledgers, invoices, letters yellowed by age. A folded banner that read "Reclaimed Purpose is a promise, not a slogan." And journals, dozens of them, all labeled the same way. Alder Franklin, Volume X, Franklin. That was his name, the man from the street, the man I gave the coin to. He wasn't just a drifter, he was the founder. And this storage unit? It was his graveyard. I spent hours in that place, reading, touching the past, discovering a man who had built something real, something lasting until it broke him. His writing was sharp, paranoid, at first full of hope and business optimism. Notes on clients, invoices, with types, moisture, content. Then, red ink, angrier, sloppier. They're copying my process. No one wants the labor, just the look. They'll bury me in concrete and call it minimalist. His business had been swallowed, gutted, rebranded. Alder and Sons wasn't lost. It was stolen. And Franklin? He'd walked away, disappeared into a world that didn't want what he built anymore. That night, I sat on the floor of the storage unit, knees pulled up, a half-read journal in my lap, and thought, is this my future? Build something good. Watch it get scavenged, end up in the cold. And then I saw it, taped to the inside cover of the final journal. If you're reading this, you're the first person who gave something instead of taking. That coin? It was mine once. My father gave it to me when I signed the lease on our first shop. Now it's yours. Build something they can't steal. Something with your name. That was the first time I cried since my brother's funeral. Not because of the words. Because for the first time I believed I could. I left the unit with a new fire in my bones. I rebranded overnight, dropped the recycled puns and rustic nonsense. Named my work North Coin Salvage, a nod to the coin, to the man, to the promise he left folded in that dirt. And business didn't just pick up. It exploded. One client turned to 5, then 10. I started hiring help, guys from the shelter, people who knew what it meant to start over with nothing but hands and grit. And that old blueprint? It wasn't a blueprint anymore. It was a manifesto. But right when I thought I'd won it, something changed. A letter. No return address. No stamp. Just slipped under the door of my new shop like a bad omen. Inside was a photo. The same coin. Only this time? It was drenched in blood. The coin in the photo wasn't mine. Not exactly. It was the same make, the same scratches, even the tiny nick on the edge where it looked like it had been chewed once, but this one was stained red. Thick, dark, fresh. The blood looked real. The implication was worse. No note. No warning. Just that image sealed in an envelope and slid under the door of my workshop like a quiet scream. I didn't tell anyone. Not my crew, not the clients, not even Owen, the guy I just hired to help with deliveries who could bench press a fridge and still panic around staplers. I just kept going. Because when you're building something from scratch, you don't stop for ghosts. You hammer through them. But the photo stayed with me. It followed me into every truck ride, into every creak of old boards, into every late night where my eyes burned and my hands cramped and my soul felt like it was being slowly sanded away. Then the fire happened. I got the call at 4:12 a.m. from the security company. The warehouse, our main storage unit out in Radnor, was burning. By the time I got there, it was already half ash. Flames reaching like hungry mouths. Sirens, flashing lights, smoke that smelled like everything I'd worked for was dying in real time. They said it was electrical. I said they were full of shit. Because the main breaker had been shut off the night before. I knew because I'd been the one to shut it. The next day, I checked the remaining footage from the half-working security camera we'd installed on the cheap. It caught nothing but shadows. But there was one moment, 1:48 a.m., when a figure crossed the corner of the frame. Just a blur. A shape. But I recognized the coat. Old, faded green. Canvas. Heavy collar. I'd seen it once before. In the photo from Franklin's journal. The boy beside him, his son, had worn that exact coat. And suddenly a thought hit me so hard I had to sit down to catch my breath. What if Franklin wasn't the only one who disappeared? What if the boy never walked away? What if he'd been watching? The next few days were chaos. Insurance forms. Apologies to clients. News reports about the small business destroyed by tragedy. Sympathy calls. Sympathy donations. Sympathy stares. But I didn't care about any of it. Because I couldn't shake the feeling that the fire was a warning. Not to stop, not to run, but to look deeper. So I went back, to the journal, volume 6, toward the end. Red ink again, scribbled frantic. He thinks I sold out, that I let them take it from me. But he doesn't understand. You can't fight a war with hammers and hope. I made a deal, to save the name, to protect him. He left anyway. I turned the page. There was a list of names. No headers, no titles, just 15 names in a column. And at the bottom, underlined twice, Reclamation Union. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew where to start. I drove out to the old lumber district. It had mostly been flattened over the years, strip malls, asphalt, a couple of vape shops that never seemed open. But one building still stood, windowless, brick and concrete, no sign, just a dented steel door with one word spray painted on it. Union. I knocked. Nothing. I knocked again. Still nothing. I turned to leave, then the door creaked open an inch. You're late, a voice said. I froze. Excuse me. You're not the first to come looking, the voice continued. But you might be the last. The door opened wider. A man stood there. Tall, beard like steel wool, eyes gray and mean. He wore a flannel shirt that had seen more winters than a snow plow and boots black with oil. Come in, he said. I did. The inside was nothing like I expected. Workbenches, blueprints, dusty wood stacked 10 feet high. And in the center an old sign, cracked, burned along one edge. It read, Alder and Sons Reclaimed Purpose. He saw me looking. It's the original. Pulled it from the wreckage after the fire. You knew Franklin? I asked. I was Franklin's foreman, he said. Back when men still bled for wood instead of gluing it into fashion. And the boy? He turned, looked me dead in the eyes. His name was Eli. And if you got a photo of a bloody coin, then I'm guessing he's back. Back? Eli never forgave his father for selling the patents. For letting their process, their legacy, get chopped up by corporate vultures and sold as DIY lifestyle branding. Franklin made a deal with Socorro Group in '97. Thought he was protecting the family. But the moment he signed the contract, Eli cut him off. And now? He exhaled. Yeah? He's been burning every fake, reclaimed business to the ground. Anyone who uses Franklin's method without even knowing they're using it. Anyone who profits off the ruin he thinks belongs to him. Why me? The man laughed bitter and dry. Because you're doing it right. Because you gave something instead of taking. And that scares him more than any trademark. I swallowed hard. So what happens next? The man leaned closer. He'll test you. See what you're made of. And if he thinks you're just another buzzword merchant, another hollow brand built on borrowed dust, he'll finish what he started. I looked down at the burned edge of the sign. What if I fight back? He nodded. Then you better build fast. And you better build loud. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor of my apartment, the blueprint Franklin gave me in one hand and the bloody photo in the other. Two sides of the same coin. And somewhere out there? Eli. The forgotten son. The fire starter. The legacy gone rogue. And me? I was next. You ever feel like you're being watched? Not the dramatic kind. Not a red laser on your forehead or footsteps behind you in an alley. I mean the kind that makes the hair on your arms stand like antennas. The kind where silence gets too heavy, too symmetrical. That was me. Every morning I opened the shop, I half expected to find ash instead of orders. Every time I turned the key, I braced for a lock that didn't click. But nothing happened. No fires. No blood. Just stillness. And in that stillness, orders started pouring in. Big ones. A commercial brewery wanted reclaimed wood booths. A wedding planner in Pittsburgh wanted centerpieces made from guilt-free salvage. A boutique hotel asked for 10 hand-finished headboards. All in the same week. It didn't make sense. I hadn't advertised. Hell, I barely had a website. Then one night I got an email from a Clive V. No subject, just a Dropbox link. Inside, a spreadsheet. Names, projects, dollar amounts. And next to them, canceled. Redirected to North Coin Salvage. Every single one. They weren't finding me. They were being sent to me. Diverted. Funneled. By someone pulling strings. By him. Was it a warning? A gift? A setup? I didn't know. But I took the orders. I delivered every piece. And then the next envelope arrived. This time, not a photo. A piece of wood. Oak. Hand-planed. A single groove in the side. Precise. Clean. I knew it immediately. Not because of the smell or the grain. Because I'd already delivered it. 2 weeks ago to a couple who wanted an entry bench with just enough character to look haunted. I remember sanding that groove myself. The wood had come back to me. With nothing else in the envelope. Except a note. You're sanding over ghosts. Stop pretending they're yours. No name. No signature. But now it was clear. He wasn't just watching. He was testing. The man from the union called me the next day. He didn't ask how I was. Didn't check in. Just said 5 words. He's not done with you. I didn't bother pretending not to know who he was. What's he waiting for? A reason. I already gave him one. No. You gave him a challenge. And Eli doesn't lose challenges. I leaned against the shop wall, hand gripping the old trowel we used for glue work. My palms were sweating like I was holding a live grenade. I'm not backing down, I said. There was silence on the line. Then you'll need to find the last copy. What copy? He He lowered his voice. The original Alder process ledger. Before the fire. The one they didn't sell to Socorro. Franklin buried it somewhere. Where? A beat passed. Not where, he said. With who? I drove 3 hours out to a retirement village in Jersey. A nurse named Nadine, who used to work for Franklin in the early 80s, had emailed me weeks ago saying she recognized the angles in my sanding work from back then. I didn't respond. Now I needed her. She lived in Unit 7, bottom floor. Had a garden of succulents and coffee tins full of nails out front. Opened the door before I knocked. About time, she said. She poured us sweet tea in chipped mugs and told me everything. About how Franklin had built Alder and Sons from the bones of his father's trade. About how Eli had inherited the fire but none of the patience. How the process had been more than just sanding angles and moisture calibration. It had meaning. A way of preserving memory, she said. Franklin believed the spirit of a place lived in its wood. When Socorro bought them out, Franklin stripped the ledger down to 2 copies. Gave one to the lawyers. The other? He gave to her. She opened a shoebox under her sink. Inside, a red notebook. Worn. Weather-warped. Still intact. Ledger 1A for those who build with purpose. She slid it to me like it weighed 100 pounds. I kept it all these years. He said if someone ever earned it, I'd know. I looked up. Why now? Because someone's trying to burn the story down. And you? You're the first one to write a new chapter. That night, I didn't sleep. I read the ledger from cover to cover. It was beautiful. Math and memory stitched together. Sanding angles paired with notes like, use this pattern when the client lost a child. Grain assessments next to scribbled lines like, this knot bleeds sorrow. Don't erase it. It wasn't just craftsmanship. It was therapy. Legacy written in sawdust. I cried halfway through. Then I started copying it by hand. 1 page per night. And that's when Eli made his next move. My shop was broken into. Not robbed. Rearranged. Every board reorganized. Every label relabeled. No theft. No cameras triggered. Just a chalk message written on the wall over my workstation. Now build without the script. I stood there for 10 minutes, breathing hard, chest tight. He wanted me to prove it. That I wasn't just rebuilding what was handed to me. That I understood it. That I could survive without the map. So I did. The next project? I didn't use the journal. Didn't sketch. Didn't even measure the old way. I built from instinct. From memory. From feel. A bench. Simple. Strong. Uneven in one leg on purpose. Symbolic. Balance that resists perfection. Delivered it to a grieving father who'd lost his son in a biking accident. He sat on it. Cried for 20 minutes. Then emailed me. This is the first thing I've sat on in months that didn't feel like it was trying to fix me. Thank you. I didn't get another chalk message after that. Just a package. A book. Franklin's final journal. One line scrawled inside the cover in a handwriting I didn't recognize. You're not the ghost, kid. You're the match. The shop stayed quiet for 3 days. No new orders. No new threats. No bloodstained mail or cryptic returns from dead clients. Just quiet. And that scared me more than everything else combined. Because Eli wasn't finished. He wasn't the kind of man who let things end clean. He was waiting, testing, watching. And the whole time I couldn't stop thinking about the note in Franklin's journal. You're not the ghost, kid. You're the match. At first, I didn't get it. But matches don't live in silence. They spark. And burn. And if Eli wanted to see if I could build without the blueprint, I'd show him what it meant to build without fear. So I did the one thing no reclaimed wood business has ever done in their right mind. I went public. I called a friend of a friend who knew someone at the local paper and gave them a story, a kid who gave his last coin to a stranger and built a business from a blueprint drawn by a homeless ghost. They ate it up. Next thing I know, there's a reporter in my shop snapping photos of me sanding a board like I'm some kind of folk hero. The piece ran under the headline, "The Coin That Built a Business." It went viral. Not Kardashian viral, but enough that the story spread beyond our zip code. Clients doubled, then tripled. A production company called about a docuseries. I hung up on them halfway through their pitch. I wasn't doing this for a Netflix deal. I was doing it for him, to flush him out. Because if Eli was watching, if he truly believed this was a theft of legacy, he wouldn't tolerate the spotlight. And I was right. 3 nights later, he came to me. In person. It was just after midnight. I was in the back of the shop sanding down an edge that kept chipping, too tired to stop, too wired to sleep when I heard the front bell ring. Which was strange. Because the door was locked. I stepped out of the workroom. And there he was, wearing the green coat from the photo. Eyes too still, too old for his face. Hands like they remembered splinters before they remembered warmth. "Hi," he said. No smile. No weapon. No warning. Just that voice, like gravel crushed under polished wood. I figured it was time we met. I didn't answer. Didn't breathe. He stepped forward. Took in the room. The sawdust. The grain. The weight. "You changed the layout," he said, gesturing to the space. Franklin always kept the benches in a horseshoe. Said it made the work feel like a conversation. "This isn't his shop," I said. He nodded once. "No. It's not." Silence stretched. "You started the fires?" I asked. "No," he said. "But I made them happen." "What does that mean?" He tilted his head. "Sometimes legacy is like mold. You think it's gone. But all it takes is a little moisture and suddenly you're coughing on your father's dust again. I felt my jaw clench. You think I'm stealing from you? He looked me dead in the eye. No, he said. I think you're the first one who didn't. That hit harder than anything else. He walked to the central table, ran his fingers along the edge. You know why I sent the wood back? He asked. Because you wanted to remind me it wasn't mine. He shook his head. No. Because it was. And I wanted to see what you'd do when it came home dirty. I stared at him, heart pounding. He reached into his coat. I froze. But all he pulled out was a coin. The coin. The same coin he'd once left in that paper cup. Only this time it was polished, clean. He set it on the bench. You gave it away without knowing what it meant, he said. That was the test. And this? I asked. He looked at the coin like it was a memory with sharp teeth. This is the key. He reached into his coat again, pulled out a folded envelope, a deed, and a keychain with one tag. Alder Timber Yard, Lot 47. What's this? I asked. It was mine, he said. Now it's yours. There's wood there no one's touched in 30 years. Heartwood. Floor joists from the Roosevelt Library. Redwood beams that outlived 3 hurricanes. I blinked. Why are you giving me this? Because you did what I never could, he said. You built without bitterness. He paused. Then, and because I'm tired. I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. He turned to leave. Stopped at the door. You're not the match anymore, he said. What am I? He smiled just slightly. You're the fire. Then he was gone. I sat in that workshop for hours. Just me. And the coin. And the weight of a legacy I didn't ask for. But was proud to carry. The next morning I drove out to Lot 47. It was real. The gate was rusted shut. The yard overgrown. But the wood, my God, the wood was beautiful. I walked the stacks like they were monuments. Ran my hand across a beam that had once held up a lighthouse. And right there, in the dirt, I made a promise. If I build it, I'll build it right. Then I got to work. Lot 47 was more than a salvage yard. It was a graveyard for forgotten greatness. Each board had a whisper in it. Each beam, a pulse. Even the air felt denser, like it had soaked up every hour of sweat ever poured into these planks. I didn't waste time. Within a week, we cleaned it. The crew, my crew, was quiet the first day. But by the third, they were singing, laughing. One guy, Todd, found a live raccoon in a pile of siding and named it Barry. Barry lived in the back of the truck for a bit. We didn't ask questions. We milled the redwood into slabs, planed the oak, stripped every nail with reverence. Some boards we didn't touch at all, they were already perfect. Already ready? And for the first time I didn't build for a client. I built for us. For what we stood on. A space. A structure. North Coin Workshop built entirely from what nobody else wanted. Designed not just to produce furniture, but to teach. To gather. A school for people with calloused hands and open hearts. For ex-cons and dropouts and artists who lost their names in the margins. People like me. People like Franklin. People like Eli. When the walls were up, I sent out the invites. No press. No marketing. Just a hand-delivered note. If you've ever built anything real, we're cutting the ribbon at sundown. And they came. Clients. Crew. Strangers. That woman from the Historical Society. The widow of a contractor I once helped for free. Even the fire marshal who tried to find me 6 months ago. He brought his daughter. Said she liked wood shavings. At sundown I stood under the frame of the entrance, a triangle of steel and heartwood, and held up a coin. The coin. The original. Polished. Balanced on my fingers. I didn't give a speech. I just said, we build with what no one else wants. And dropped it into a stone basin filled with water at the threshold. It sank. Everyone clapped like it meant something. And maybe it did. Eli showed up 3 weeks later. Late. Quiet. Unannounced. I was in the back sanding a slab of hickory when I saw him standing in the doorway. Same coat. Same eyes. Different posture, softer. He didn't speak at first. Just watched. Then he walked in, ran his fingers along the grain. I hated this place once, he said. Now? He shrugged. Still kinda hate it. I chuckled. Fair. But it's real, he added. And that matters more. We didn't say goodbye. He left a bundle of old alder blueprints on my desk. Inside one was a note. You made peace with the past. Now build the future. We expanded. Built satellite spaces in towns with names no one puts on t-shirts. Shipped tables to countries I'd never set foot in. Taught kids how to read with grain before they ever held a phone. And the name? North Coin stayed. Because sometimes the best thing you can give someone is a chance to give something away. That coin wasn't magic. It didn't guarantee success. It just reminded me of the truth. Legacy isn't inherited. It's built, board by board, scratch by scratch. And maybe, if you're lucky, by a single act of kindness that sets the whole damn thing in motion.